Hello and welcome to the Optimize Show. I am David Mamano, your host. So excited to be here today. Thank you so much for being a part of our show. We hope to really help you. If you're looking to optimize and grow your sales, this is the show for you today. We've got a great guest named Dan Carusi. Dan, welcome to the show.
David, thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
So glad to have you here. So you have a very unique way of doing sales training, which we're going to talk about. I want everybody to make sure they listen and watch because I don't know anybody in the world doing sales training the way Dan is. So there's a little teaser for you. But just a little intro with Dan. Dan, he is the owner of a company called Red Paint Consulting. Where does that come from, Dan? Red Paint.
So Red Paint's actually a lake in Ontario that we were paddling across with the Boy Scouts probably about 10 years ago now. That was an extremely challenging, both physically and mental canoeing expedition with the Boy Scouts. And we came together as one team pursuing one common goal at that moment on Red Paint Lake. And the titles went away as leaders, titles for the boys went away. We became one team, and that really became the foundation as far as my philosophy for helping others perform at a higher level. So that's where Red Paint Consulting was founded and the philosophy came from.
I love it. Red Paint Lake. I got to look that up. And you were with the Boy Scouts, which is, what is their, I was a Boy Scout. I didn't make it to Eagle. I made it to first class. But what is their, is it service above self? What is their motto? I'm trying to remember.
Well, I think the original one is always be prepared, right?
Always be prepared. Yeah. Service
but there
above
is a
self.
service.
What's that?
Yeah, there is a big service component to it.
Big
that
service,
really drives. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's embedded in there.
I think the first one I said is for a Rotary or something like that. 'Cause I was in
It could be.
So a little tease as to how Dan does his consulting, folks, is he describes his sales training, his consulting, experiential adventure learning. So doesn't that make you want to learn a little bit more about, in growing your sales, with Dan? So Dan, what he does is he is really pushing people outside of their comfort zone to accelerate growth. And, I think, the comfort zone, people call it the comfort zone. And after a while, I think it's not that comfortable anymore, right? Because you're kind of like, I want to grow, I want to learn, I got to get out of this, So pushing out of that uncomfort zone into new skills. And then you call yourself, your title is a sales transformation evangelist. Did you come up with that? I mean, I really like that.
I don't know if I came up with that or somebody just branded me with that. The thought behind it, David, is being transformational in the way that we train people, right? And especially in specific to sales, that the traditional way of just training them on the skills or learning a new skill and then turning them loose wasn't giving us the impact that we needed, right? It's not generating the results and the performance we're looking for. And at the same time, the way the buyer has changed and how people are purchasing, there has to be a transformation on how we sell and then obviously how we train people to go sell differently. So I found myself out there talking about that to as many sales leaders as possible, to as many CEOs. And I think at some point somebody says, you're like an evangelist for this transformation type work. And I think it just stopped. But I'm passionate about getting people to look at this differently, that we can't sell the same way, we can't train the same way as we used to in the past. It may have worked then. The world has changed. The buyer has changed, and we all have changed. So we have to transform.
Yep. I remember taking some sales training when I got out of college in the late 80s. Well, I mean, early 90s, I guess. And very different than the sales training today, right?
Yeah.
I remember the sales training back, early 90s. It was more like the salesperson was talking so much and just trying to almost like corner them into the close, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Dan, well, what do we have to do today to get this deal closed? Now, that doesn't work too well today, right?
No, but that's the change, David. I mean, it used to be very technique driven, right? And if you just implement it and apply these right techniques, you're going to lead a prospect to the point where they have no other choice but to say yes. And the buyer is so much savvier today, if that's the right word. And it's all about relationships and trust and being able to help versus sell. And that's the change. And I learned those techniques. If I can do this for you today, will you sign the contract and we can move forward? And I was uncomfortable myself selling that way. And I started my own transformation to be successful in sales. And now we're just accelerating it because the dynamics are not the same where you can apply the techniques. You're going to sound like everybody else. You're going to be viewed as a typical salesperson. Let's think about it. When you think of a salesperson, what's the first words you think of if you're a buyer? Usually not positive.
Right. You're usually like, oh my God, what is he gonna pressure me into buying, right?
Correct. So if you show up and you sound that way and they're already perceiving you to be that way, how are you going to work with them? How are you going to sell them something, right? So we have to start there as far as the different mindset on how we view ourselves as a salesperson and how we interact with our prospects and clients.
Yeah, that's great. I want to get into some of your strategies, but first, how did you become? What is your kind of your experience in journey to being the guru that you are today?
Yeah, how long is the show? See if I can give you the abbreviated version because there's a couple reinventions in my career that I'll skip over to how I got to where I'm at today. But I started off in sales. I came out of school and was trying to figure out what I was going to do for my life. And someone says, "Hey, why don't you start in a sales career?" Got into sales, not a lot of training. I got the Zig Ziglar books and started reading those and, trying to apply that and it worked. I had some good success and moved up into sales management roles into eventually running a P&L or P&Ls in various industries. So I started in hospitality, working for Hyatt hotels, made some time in telecom, working for AT&T, as well as MCI. And then moved into a series of technology companies, software companies, where I would help with the sales enablement and then eventually into sales development, but then expanded into talent development, chief learning officer roles where, working to help develop professional development, leadership development, sales development, but then also supporting clients where they needed education on the products and solutions. So I was fortunate to be in roles where I was doing both internal and external training, while helping businesses transform. So if you think of it in terms of private equity companies and their portfolio companies, to get to the next level, you have to accelerate growth. So I would partner on with the leadership teams on change management, on organizational design, on leadership development programs, on accelerating sales growth and productivity to get to that outcome, which is whatever that transaction is going to be. So and then in between all that, or I should say over and above all that, I started doing activities externally with the Boy Scouts of being up there in the lakes, but then also rock climbing, mountaineering, horseback riding with the family. And it was through those experiences that I started to connect the dots between what we experience outside our comfort zones and out in these activities has a direct correlation back to how we perform in the workplace. And if we can connect those two together, we're going to see much higher accelerated results. And so that's how I ended up to the point of Red Paint Consulting. I'm now in a position to be able to use that experience I have from sales and in the corporate world, my outdoor activity experiences connected two together to help people perform at a higher level.
Oh, that's great. Well, congratulations on the journey and all the great work you're doing today with that. So our question is, as we talked about, sales is very different today, right? When we were starting out in sales, we probably started out with the phone book, the Rolodex, and the phone, code calling, knocking on doors. In today's world with the internet, email, texting, et cetera, social media, there's so much more you could do for sales, right? And there's so many more ways for prospects to avoid us. God forbid, a prospect actually picks up the phone these days, right? Or if you walk in and do a cold call, they not quite often they're welcoming you, like, "Oh, so glad you're here. Have a cup of coffee." It's like, "Did you see the sign out front?" So in today's world, what are how are people embracing some of the differences And conversely, what is holding some people, some teams back in today's new technology-based sales world?
It's a great question. And I think if you look at what has changed and how we got to where we are here and what's holding a lot of us back, as you mentioned, when I started in sales, very similar. I had a metal desk, a phone, and the yellow pages. And they said, get to it, start calling. And you could call into people and find one person. You can get an appointment. You could then follow a sales process. Hopefully, there's a need, a compelling reason to buy, and you have the right product or solution to help them. You build a relationship, and then you mutually agree to move forward. And there's still some truth that that's how it works today, but it's much more complex. I'll argue that it's far more difficult today to sell than it was back in the day. And the reason for, you mentioned technology, you mentioned social media, how the buyer has changed by leveraging social media has made it difficult to even have a conversation with a prospect or a client. They can do their research and their due diligence without talking to anybody. And back in the day, that wasn't the case. You were there to educate them on your product and solution. They can get what they need from technology and from the internet. At the same time, we used to sell to one person, maybe two people. Now you have buying committees. Now you have buying committees up to 10 to 12 different people that you have to influence or get a consensus across that group to move forward with your product or solution without talking to them as much as you used to. That's hard, right? I mean, that's very difficult. So where people are struggling now is many of us had great success selling the way it used to be. So people that have 20 years, 30 years are still trying to apply that same approach. And they're going, yeah, but Dan, I've been a successful salesperson my entire career. Why should I change? Why should I do something different now? So they stick with that, but now they're struggling because the buyer and that buying committee and the technology has forced that shift. And so there has to be a different way of training and transformation to help folks make that shift themselves to understand what they can do differently. It's moving. It's the concept. I forgot who told me this, so it's going to be an anonymous quote, but we're moving past helping the sellers sell more to helping the buyers buy more. And that's a shift in mindset. It's about help. How do I help you navigate your own procurement process? How do I help you influence those other buyers and decision makers versus can I give you another demo or can I give you another presentation on my solutions, right? Or can I use another technique to get you there? That's not helping them. And if you can't help them, they're not going to want to work with you, And so we have to train people to start first thinking differently and being open, eyes wide open to it before we can then get a shift in their behaviors.
Yeah, I just think of myself, like when I buy products, I usually end up buying from the people that have been a resource to me, have been a helpful resource to me. And then when I need that product, I go to them, right? And that's probably part of their long-term strategy is like, they know I'm a prospect someday. They're there for me, helping me. And then all of a sudden, like I pop up, need the product. Who am I gonna go to, right? And also I see a lot of salespeople and companies doing a lot of content strategies. Do you see that? For marketing to turn into sales. And if you do see some of those, what are some of the more effective content strategies that you've seen for a sales strategy?
Yeah, I had seen that. I'm not an expertise on the digital marketing side of it, but that is now a big investment for a lot of organizations to get the right content out at the right time. And what I've seen that works best is making that content easily accessible to the buyer when they need it and where they are in the buying process or the buying job or role that they have. So someone on that buying committee may be assigned with go out and research what solutions are out there, and someone else might be assigned to with another task. So you have to make that available for them. So if they go to your website or if they see some type of PDF or data sheet, marketing data sheet coming out, it's very targeted content for what they need at that moment. And if you can make that alignment, again, it goes back to you're giving them what they need at that moment to help them go to the next step in their buying process versus, hey, here's all the wonderful things our products do and what we have to offer, and here's our history, and here's all this good stuff. But is that what they're looking for at that moment? If not, they don't care. right? And putting the second part is putting that marketing content in the hands of the seller and educating the seller on when to use that and for what persona and at what time and for what buying role. So it's a very strategic approach with that content versus, hey, come to this link and I'll give you access to all of our content, or I'm going to give you a whole bunch of attachments on an email and tell me which one had the most value or impact to you. So it's a well, there used to be a bigger divide between sales and marketing. There has to be even tighter alignment now, as they move forward. So marketing and sales is tied together on one strategy around that digital content to align with the buying process and where the buyer is, and then leveraging the salesperson as a conduit between that is where I've seen a great best practice and success coming from.
Excellent. So, there's still need for salespeople going forward, right? AI, technology, not going to replace salespeople.
There's concern, right? But it cannot. I mean, AI cannot build relationships. AI cannot build connections. AI cannot do the things that human interaction is still needed for. Despite all the technology and all the advancements and all the changes in the buyer, the one thing that hasn't changed is trust and relationships. That is still the foundation, not just for selling, but for how people do business together. And AI can't create that. AI might help make a better product, a better solution, and some other things that's going to be better. It might help tell the seller what to do and when to do it and all those type of things. But I don't think the buyer wants to talk to a non-human, right? To be able to get help for what they need and what they're struggling with. If we go out and want to buy a new vehicle or something for our own personal use, we want to talk to somebody. We want to make eye contact. We want to, see something we have in common and leverage that. So no, I don't see AI replacing salespeople or the seller. It's just we've got to change is how we sell, and maybe we need to figure out how we leverage AI as far as sellers, but not view it as a threat that's going to make us go away.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm still the person that, when I get in a car accident, I'm calling, the owner of the agency, of the insurance agency, right? I don't want to call a 1-800 number. I want to call, the guy locally, who owns the State Farm branch in my town, who I know, and I want to talk to him. I'm an offender better. What do I do? Help me, because I know he's going to help me, right? So I don't think AI is going to be able to take the place of there, right? So yeah.
No. But, David, if you can't have the conversation where you get to really know somebody personally and how they're impacted potentially by the business challenge that they're trying to solve, because there's the business problem and then they're impacted by it, and maybe they're responsible for solving it, or maybe it's impacting their team and trying to do their jobs, and ultimately may impact how their performance is viewed, and so they're emotionally involved in it, and if we can't tap into that and understand how we can help them both personally and professionally, we're not going to bring value. We're not going to be able to get that connection to do a sale. And technology can't do that. Technology will help you do your research on somebody. It'll help you do a lot of things that makes it easier for us to connect with someone. But it still comes down to you and I making eye contact and having this conversation.
Do you remember, I don't know if you're a fan of The Office with Michael Scott? There was an episode. Now this is way back when, before people had the GPS on their phone, right? This episode came out where you would buy the GPS and you would put it on the dashboard, right? And it would tell you where to go. Mm-hmm. And Michael Scott was out with Dwight and trying to renew or bring clients back with a gift basket, right? They were going to show up in person, unannounced, beautiful gift basket. We want you back, right? And they were going to do face-to-face, right? And it wasn't working. And they all were like, "Oh, thanks, but we're still good with who we switched to." And he was trying to prove that salespeople were better than technology, better than their new website. Like Dunder Mifflin had a new website to take orders, and he was trying to prove that he and Dwight were better than the website, right? And then, so I bring up the GPS because he wanted to prove that technology was not always smarter than humans. And he followed the GPS, literally, it told him to take a turn into a lake. And he went into the lake and lost the car, because he wanted to prove that technology was not as smart as people, so. And that was probably 15 years ago.
I love it. I know, but I mean, we can't just hand everything over to technology and think because it's so advanced now, it's going to make me successful at what I do. Whether it's a salesperson, well, I've got technology now, it'll do it for me. I'm going to be wonderful and successful, or any other job role these days. And that's the fear I have. I think many is some do believe you can replace the human connection. I just came back from a 3-day leadership development program that I'm helping deliver on. And, since the pandemic, we haven't done a lot of face-to-face, projects and opportunities. A lot of it's virtual. And yes, we have eye contact, but there's still something about being in person with people and just having a conversation and creating moments when people are vulnerable and talk about their families and talk about things that are happening to them or have impacted their life, and then finding that connection and commonality to realize I went through something very similar, or we have this in common. The likelihood of wanting to do more work together, it just goes through the roof. I mean, it just accelerates, and you can't get that through technology. You can't replace the human connection as much as we're trying to do so. And when we look at how we train in sales, trust, relationships, building that bond, getting down to how it impacts somebody emotionally is a big component that we cannot skip over.
Yep, absolutely. So I want to end this interview with an acronym that you talk about called FUD, right? Tell me about FUD.
FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I think we're loaded with all three of them right now in the world, right? Both in our personal lives and in our professional lives, and what's just happening in the world. And that fear, uncertainty, and doubt really has the ability to impact our mindset. For many, it can paralyze them. People get stuck. Teams and individuals when it comes to selling. And if they can't get unstuck, they're not going to be able to, be successful in what they're doing. And so I spent a lot of time with teams helping them get unstuck, helping them work through it. That fear could be fear of what the competition is doing, fear of I don't have the confidence or skills to be able to go do it. Uncertainty is what's happening in the market. The conditions are changing. No one's going to want to buy because they don't have the budgets or monies to do so. And then doubt ultimately is all that feeds into your confidence and ability. So you start doubting yourself that you can be successful. You start doubting your company's products or solutions. Then all of a sudden you go, but hey, boss, I can't sell because there's too much FUD out there. And then it becomes an excuse and you get stuck. So my venture, experiential learning, and the things I do, it really is to break that and to get people the confidence, the knowledge, the enablement, to arm and equip them to be able to break through the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. While their competitors are stuck, you're moving forward, and that's a big part of what has to be built into it.
And the cherry on top is what I was promising everybody. You do something so different in sales training that no one else does. And if people are watching this, they might get an idea by some of the stuff behind you. But tell us the very unique way that you are helping people grow their sales.
Thank you for the opportunity to share it. It is experiential-based learning, but I call it experiential learning on steroids, really. And so experiential learning is learning by doing with reflection. Okay, I went through this activity. What did I learn from it? What am I going to do differently? And many of us have done that. So there's nothing new or unique to that, other than many are doubling down on that and doing more of it. But I take it much further than that. And, when we call it adventure learning or outside learning, and I have equine experiential learning, the concept is to push people way outside their comfort zone. We do our most learning and growing when we're not comfortable. We're outside our comfort zone. And many times I do it unexpectedly, that people are not prepared for what may be coming, and you put them in this situation. Once they're in that drives self-awareness, and the self-awareness makes you start to reflect on who I am as a person, what I do as a seller or a professional, how I impact others negatively or positively. And then from there, you start to look at, okay, what do I need differently to impact that positively? What behaviors do I need to shift or move to? So it's a process that moves through being uncomfortable to a behavioral shift. So at the end of the programs, people walk away going, okay, I get it. if I do this, this happens, but if I do this, something else is going to happen. It's not me telling somebody to do it. Traditional sales training and other training is, I'm going to teach you a new skill. Now you go out, practice it, and apply it. I'm not saying you don't need techniques and skills, but when you teach that way, people tend to go back to the way they were selling before and don't fully leverage a new skill. I want people to change their behaviors in a way that's going to accelerate and drive their results. So when I say adventure outdoors, it could be on a hiking trail, it could be paddling down a river, it could be on a rock face where we put people up and do some climbing. It could be in a local park, it could be in a parking lot where I can do some activities, so there's different ranges to it. We push people out of their comfort zone, but we don't go to the freaking out zone. So you can go too far, you have people freaking out, but then right to the edge. If you go to freaking out, then they start shutting down and stop learning, right? So you have to find that balance. The one I'm really excited about is the equine facilitated learning, where we partner with horses for sales professionals and leaders and teams to improve performance. And it's mostly on the ground activities with horses, getting real-time feedback for how you show up, how you interact, how you build a relationship, trust, nonverbal communication, transferring positive and negative energy, everything that you do in front of a prospect or a client that they don't tell you other than not buying from you, the horse is going to tell you real time. And it's just a wonderful, different way to get people out of their comfort zone and to learn new things, change their behaviors. And then I watch them go back, apply it, act differently, and see great success that comes from it. So again, this came from the red paint lake experience and the canoeing, when that was about as experiential as you can get. And I saw behaviors change. I saw people transform. And with that, we were all different people coming out of it, and I led differently. People grew in that moment. Well, we can do that in a way that also impacts how we grow and how we can be successful in the workplace.
So a quick story here. When I was about 5, I lived in Marietta, Georgia. My dad worked for Kodak. We were in Rochester, but we got transferred down there. And my parents signed me up for horseback lessons, right? Horse riding lessons. And so what happened is they put me on a horse, and I learned pretty fast. And I got the horse going really, really fast. And they had to take me off because I was dangerous, right? If I fell off, I was going to get hurt. So they gave me like the slow old horse. And believe it or not, somehow I got that guy going fast too, going around the track. And so that was my one and only horseback riding lesson, because they told my parents that I could not come back because I was too dangerous to myself.
That's fine. Those experiences and every opportunity we have outdoors it's the same. We're learning the same things that we have to do in the workplace. If I'm on a rope team climbing a rock face, there's collaboration, there's communication, there's trust, there's inspiration, motivating, equals vulnerability. We're sharing what we're scared of or afraid of. There's different job roles, right? All this points to one team coming around and rallying around one common goal. If it's team performance improvement, you'll get a team tight, working together, got each other's back, and be able to build and go from there. Individual is going to get you, what you need personally to be able to grow and transform. I was just out riding with my daughter last weekend, trail riding, and we had a water crossing, and both horses didn't want to cross the water. And, went through all kinds of things to get through it. We eventually did. And I'm on the plane this week, and I'm writing notes now going, I learned a lot from that moment, as how I handled it with my daughter. I crossed for her, and I was taking a video of her on the other side and realized she needed my help. And I'm over here filming, saying I'm on the other side of the river. And that you don't do that as a leader. So it's those moments that I help people see through these experiences. Then they can, do a different behavioral shift when they're back in the working place. The self-awareness around it is incredible.
Excellent. Dan Carusi, where can we find you? People want to reach out.
Best way, you can redpaintconsulting.com. You can there, or at my email address, redpaintconsulting@gmail.com, are the best ways to be able to reach me. But for more information on what we do and who we are, redpaintconsulting.com is a great place to go.
How about this? How about if they mention the Optimize show, we're going to give them a little special treat. How's that sound?
Absolutely.
All right.
You got a deal.
You let me know if anyone mentions they heard about it on the Optimize show. I'm gonna send them this mug. All right.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Dan, for being here. Appreciate you spending your time with us, and congratulations on all the incredible work you're doing.
Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show and the conversation with you, and really appreciate it. So thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you, viewers, listeners, for watching this episode and this great interview on the Optimize Show. I am David Momano, your host. We're here every Wednesday morning with a new episode. YouTube, our website, which is optimize.inc. Follow us, like us, love us, social media, all that great stuff. Thank you so much. Make sure to have an awesome day.